History of media law in India. 1947 Role of press changed slowly. 1947 After partition. 6 radio stations came up in Bombay, Calcutta, Delhi, Trichy, Lucknow and Madras. Freedom of press, 1950. On 26th of January 1950 the Constitution was brought into force. Freedom of press was also therefore incorporated in the Constitution, to empower the press to spread the knowledge. Thus, decided to safeguard this freedom of press as a fundamental right. It is necessary to mention here that this freedom under Article 19(1)(a) is not only cribbed, cabined and confined to newspapers and periodicals but also includes pamphlets, leaflets, handbills, circulars and every sort of publication which affords a vehicle of information and opinion. 1951 The Press, Objectionable Matters, Act reminiscent of earlier laws was passed by the Nehru government. The Press, Objectionable Matters, Act. 1951. This enactment provides against the printing and publication of motivation to crime and other objectionable matters. 1951-52 The first national elections was covered by the regional and national press. 1952-54. The Press Commission made inquiry into the structure and functioning of press. One of the many recommendations was for the appointment of a press registrar and setting up of Press Council. 1964. A committee on broadcasting and information media was set up under the chairmanship of A. K. Chanda. Delivery of books and newspapers, Public Libraries, Act. 1954. According to this act, the publishers of books and newspapers are required to deliver, free of cost, a copy of every published book to the National Library at Calcutta and 1 copy each to 3 other public libraries specified by the central government. The Working Journalists and Other Newspaper Employees Act. 1955, it lays down the minimum standards of service conditions for newspaper employees and journalists. 1956 The Press Act was allowed to relapse and the first Press Commission was formed. The Newspaper, Prices and Pages, Act. 1956, this statute empowers the central government to regulate the price of newspapers in relation to the number of pages and size and also to regulate the allocation of space to be allowed for advertising matter. Defense of India Act. 1962 and Civil Defense Act. 1968 This act came into force during the emergency proclaimed in 1962. This act aimed at restricting the freedom of the press to a large extent, keeping in mind the unrest prevailing in India in lieu of the war against China. The act empowered the central government to issue rules with regard to prohibition of publication or communication prejudicial to the civil defense/military operations, prevention of prejudicial reports and prohibition of printing or publishing any matter in any newspaper. 1966 Separation radio and television with 2 independent corporations. 1967 Commercial service started called Vivid Bharti. 1976 Separation of radio and television. TV was called Doordarshan. In 1975, MRS. Indira Gandhi clamped an internal emergency. The government during this time suppressed transmission of news by imposing censorship on newspapers, journals, radio, TV, telegrams, news agencies and on foreign correspondence. Even teleprinters' service were subjected to pre-censorship. The censorship was total and unparalleled in the history of press in India. 1977 Janata government appointed a working group. 1982 Second Press Commission recommended delinking of the press from its connections with other industries. One of the major recommendations was to set up a National Development Commission. Press Council Act. 1978, under this act, the Press Council was reconstituted, after 1976, to maintain and improve the standards of newspaper and news agencies in India. 1984 Jagannath Mishra moved the Bihar Press Bill but protests by journalists forced him to withdraw. 1987 Rajiv Gandhi initiated the Anti-Defamation Bill, also met the same fate. Broadcast and its laws. Previously the broadcast media was under complete monopoly of the Government of India. Private organizations were involved only in commercial advertising and sponsorships of programs. However, after the Supreme Court emphasized that every citizen has a right to telecast and broadcast to the viewers/listeners any important event through electronic media, television or radio, and also provided that the Broadcasting Code, adopted by the Fourth Asian Broadcasting Conference in 1962 listing certain cardinal principles to be followed by the electronic media, is of prime importance so far as laws governing broadcast medium are concerned. To promote the advancement of education and culture, to raise and maintain high standards of decency and decorum in all programs. To provide programs for the young which, by variety and content, will inculcate the principles of good citizenship. Films Laws of India. As India is one of the largest producers of motion pictures in the world. The Cinematograph Act, 1952. This act has been passed to make provisions for a certification of cinematographed films for exhibitions by means of cinematograph. Under this act, a board of film censors, now renamed Central Board of Film Certification, with advisory panels at regional centers, is empowered to examine every film and sanction it, whether for unrestricted exhibition or for exhibition restricted to adults. The board is also empowered to refuse to sanction a film for public exhibition. The Copyright Act, 1957. According to this act, copyright means the exclusive right to commercially exploit the original literary, dramatic, artistic, musical work, sound recordings or cinematographic films as per the wishes of the owner of copyright, subject to the restrictions imposed in the act. To make a copy of the film. To cause the film, insofar as it consists of visual images, to be seen in public, and insofar as it consists of sounds to be heard in public. The Bombay Entertainments Duty Act, 1923. It imposes a tax on the public exhibition of motion pictures and other forms of entertainment. Bombay Cinemas Regulation Act, 1953. It provides a scheme for state licensing of cinema theaters and other places where motion pictures are exhibited. Cyber law. Cybercrimes can involve criminal activities that are traditional in nature, such as theft, fraud, forgery, defamation and mischief, all of which are subject to the Indian Penal Code. The abuse of computers has also given birth to a gamut of new age crimes that are addressed by the Information Technology Act, 2000. We can categorize cybercrimes in two ways. The computer as a target. Using a computer to attack other computers, like hacking, virus/worm attacks, DOS attack, etc. The computer as a weapon. Using a computer to commit real-world crimes, like cyber terrorism, IPR violations, credit card frauds, theft frauds, pornography, etc. Cybercrime regulated by cyber laws or internet laws. Cable Television Networks Regulation Act, 1995 basically regulates the operation of cable television in the territory of India and regulates the subscription rates and the total number of total subscribers receiving programs transmitted in the basic tier. In pursuance of the Cable Television Network Regulation Amendment Bill, 2002. The central government may make it obligatory for every cable operator to transmit or retransmit program of any pay channel through an addressable system as and when the central government so notifies. Direct-to-home broadcasting, direct-to-home, DTH, broadcasting service, refers to distribution of multi-channel TV programs in Ku-band by using a satellite system and by providing TV signals directly to the subscribers' premises without passing through an intermediary such as a cable operator. The Union government has decided to permit direct-to-home TV service in Ku-band in India. The draft of the Broadcasting Services Regulation Bill was brought out in 2006. It had been formulated to regulate the broadcast services in India and needs to get the approval of the Parliament.